Hey everyone, welcome to our small footprint. My name is Nyssa, and if you're new here, we are a family of 8 who live off-grid in Australia. Today's video, I had completely other plans for today's video that I was going to film, and it didn't happen because I didn't have any chickpeas, and I thought I did. So I was going to do instant hummus canned in jars, which we have run out of on the shelf, but yeah, I don't have any chickpeas. I thought I did. So I'm going to have to buy some in the grocery run that is next week, so that's been put off. So then I didn't really have any plans of what to film for tomorrow's video, so I'm not ahead of videos yet. So it's Thursday and I need something for tomorrow morning, so eventually I'll get a bit more ahead, but for the moment I'm not. So I was just chatting to a friend and saying I have no idea what the plans aren't going to work, and she said, well, why don't you do something for Valentine's Day, because tomorrow's Valentine's Day. And I didn't realize, because we don't really celebrate any sort of holidays or anything else. It's just not really our thing, but I sat there and went, oh, okay, well, let me have a think. There is something I've been wanting to try. So we make a whole chocolate orange cake, and it is flourless. It's done with almond flour, and we make it all the time. Well, we used to. And what I did was I actually canned oranges. So you have to boil whole oranges. So this is skin, flesh, everything, and you boil the oranges, and that's what you use to make the cake. Now, when we had an abundance of oranges, what I did was I canned a whole bunch of them in these size 20 flourless jars. It works out to be, I think it's about 2 cakes worth per jar. And all I did was I boiled the oranges, I cut the knobbly bits off, got seeds out like normal, pureed them up, and then canned them in the jar. They're high acid, and so, you know, it works. Now, because these are whole oranges, so this has skin and everything in it, whilst oranges aren't low carb per se, the amount of fibre in the orange and the skin and everything else is really going to kick out the carb count. And so I don't know exactly how to figure it out, because, you know, people don't list nutritional information for eating an orange skin and all. But in my opinion, this cake will end up low carb enough that Darryl and I can have a small slice as a treat, if I use sweetener, and it won't be excessive, and the kids would always really enjoy it. So I haven't made this with artificial sweetener before. I am going to try it, and I'm going to use probably allulose. I need to do another naturally sweet order. I have just run out of her erythritol monk fruit blend, so I need to send her a message and do an order through her. So I'll probably use allulose because that's what I've got sitting here. And we'll give it a go. Now, we had to buy eggs yesterday. How sad is that? So we got the car dropped off at the mechanics yesterday, and Darryl got a lift home, so we grabbed a few things at the shop, and one of those was a carton of eggs because the goannas are eating all our eggs. So I do have eggs. It is a 6-egg cake though, so it's going to be using those up for something that hopefully will work. We shall see. So let's get it all set up and started. Now, because I have the oranges already pre-boiled, this is pretty much a 1 bowl cake. If I was using granulated sugar, I'd grind the sugar to icing sugar first, but the allulose is already ground down. And if I wanted to use whole almonds, I could grind the whole almonds down into almond meal instead of using the almond flour. But I've got no whole almonds at the moment. I've only got almond flour. So basically, all I need to do is throw it all in the bowl of the Thermomix, blend it all together, and pour it into a pan. So it's a super simple recipe, other than the boiling of the oranges, because they take 45 to an hour to boil. So having them in the jar just makes this a 1 bowl and done. So this is based on a Nigella's recipe, I think. So I've just got my notes in my recipe book, but I'm pretty sure it was based on a Nigella's recipe. All right, so the recipe has around about 375 grams of orange. So, well, it's most of a jar, just not quite all of a jar. And normally I would then like go 1.5 times the recipe, but the thing is that I'm really low on eggs and everything else, so I'm just going to use that and I'll freeze that for something else. So we've got 375 grams of oranges. We're going to put a teaspoon of baking powder. All right, we've got a teaspoon of baking powder, and we're going to do 1/2 teaspoon of bicarb as well. Except I, of course, cannot find my bicarb jar. I'm just going to do teaspoons of baking powder. It will be fine. And then we want 200 grams of almond flour. So I'm going to need to open another bag. So 200 grams of almond flour, and then it's got 250 grams of sweetener. Scoop in here. Again, I'm going to have to grab another bag of that. There we go, so 250 of sweetener, and then we're going to put 50 grams of cocoa in there. Cocoa is expensive at the moment, which is unfortunate coming into winter, because I normally use a lot of it to make hot chocolate powder, but we will get there. All right, so 50 grams of cocoa in there as well, and then just 6 eggs. And as I said, we had to buy eggs, which was really sucky when we're paying the amount of money we pay to keep chickens. Having to purchase eggs really frustrates me. All right, so 6 eggs, that's it. So now all we need to do is blend this up. We'll do 30 seconds, speed 5, and then we'll scrape down and mix it again. All right, and then we've just got this lovely, luscious looking, citrus smelling cake batter. So now I'm just going to get my pan. Now a 23 centimeter pan works well for this cake because you don't want it too thick. And I don't have a loose leaf pan in this size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line the bottom with a circle. So the easiest way to do that is you cut off a square and then you fold it in half, and you fold it in half again into another square, and then you take the edges, you fold it into a triangle, and then into a triangle once more, like that. And then if you take the point of your triangle and you line it up to the middle of the pan, and then mark the edge of where it will sit and cut on that curve, then this will be a circle. Now, let me find some scissors. I, of course, could not find scissors, so I've just used a knife, which means it's going to be a little bit more rigid rather than curved, but there you go. So there's your circle, and because I measured that it fits exactly in the bottom. So that's all I do, and then I spray the edges a little bit. And then all it does is I run a knife around the edge and it pops out of the tray fine. So these are just aluminium cake tins. This one's a little bit bent, but they work for this purpose and they're the right size. So all I'm going to do is pour this in. Just like that. The consistency looks good with the allulose instead of the raw sugar, so hopefully it'll cook up all right. And then I'm just going to stick it in a preheated oven. So the oven's preheated to 180, and it takes around about 45 minutes to cook. So that's it. You can stick it in the oven and we'll hope it turns out. And while I'm out here, so the cake's in the oven, I was looking for my chickpeas and I found some vanilla beans that I had bought a while back. So these are bourbon cure, Madagascar bourbon cure vanilla beans, and there's 7 ounces of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn them into extract. Now, vanilla extract takes like 12 months to be done. So this is not a short process, but I'm going to get it done because I had some vodka that I bought for Christmas time and never even opened because I like the idea of drinking alcohol. But in practice, we have 6 children and it's not as, So I have this bottle of vodka here and I have 7 ounces of beans. So if I put 7 ounces of beans in a quart jar, that will be just under double fold vanilla. So that will be really nice. So all I'm going to do is you don't have to, but I am going to just split them. Nothing fancy, just run a knife down the fleshiest part of them on each one. And these are lovely and moist, these beans. So all I'm going to do is just run a knife down the middle of each bean so that the caviar will end up in the mix. I'm wondering, it should be fine because I'll fill the jar up to here. I'll have enough vodka there to do that. So these should be fine not to cut in half. How are these? Actually, this might only be 700 mils. It doesn't say on it what it is. So yeah, 700 mils. So I actually might cut these in half just so that if the liquid doesn't end up far enough up the jar that the beans are all covered in liquid. So I'm going to cut them in half as well. So I'm going to split them from one end and then cut them in half and put them all in this jar. And at 700 mils, this will actually end up being probably a little bit more than double fold. So if I happen to get some more vodka, I could probably top it up and it would still be fine. But in the meantime, I don't find making vanilla particularly cost effective or efficient. It's lovely to do, and I bought my beans through Indra Vanilla and they sell them on like a pre-order basis, so you can get them fairly cheap, fairly inexpensive compared to like buying them off Amazon or whatever. And you can get all different types of cured beans, like these ones are Madagascar Burmid, but there's all different types of cures. And you can buy them in all different quantities, and so there's all the different flavors of the beans, and lots of these guys will make their vanilla extract in all different alcohols and things like that. But for me personally, I just like a straight vanilla extract. And so doing this is a lot of work because of the amount of time it takes for the beans to turn into extract. I like to use absolute rather than really cheap vodka because I find that the vodka can be too harsh, even though you're supposed to be cooking out the majority of the alcohol. It still has a tendency to linger, in my opinion. And I have made it on glycerin before, but it doesn't seem to be quite as strong. And I do like an alcohol-based vanilla because I use it in things like ice cream, and an alcohol-based vanilla will help to keep the ice cream soft and things like that. So the preference for me is to do alcohol-based, which means there's the cost of the alcohol. You can heat it, like I could warm this up in a jar and push the process a little quicker, but ideally you want to leave it in a dark spot for like 12 months before using it, giving it a shake every now and again. So there's a lot of work involved in it, and for me, I use a fair bit of vanilla. So it ends up being one of those tasks that just isn't particularly cost and time efficient. So I must have bought these beans with the intention to do something and then forgot about it, probably to make extract because that's what I like. And I do try and make sure to use the beans once they've been extracted to make paste or vanilla sugar or something, so that we're getting like a double use out of them because they're so expensive. But yeah, I don't know, bit of a unpopular opinion potentially, but I find purchasing is more efficient for me. Costco sells vanilla essence, not too bad a price, a decent one, but I've actually been buying mine from New Genie Naturals lately. So I'm not affiliated with these guys at all, but they sell paste and extract, and like it's $40 or something for 500 mils. And it's a single fold, so this will be double fold, though I could make it single fold, but then I'd have twice the amount of vodka required, and the vodka is like a $40 bottle. So yeah, like for the cost and then the lack of me having to spend the time, I find it better because of the amount of vanilla I like to use. Whereas if I was using only the stuff that I made for myself, I think I'd be really stingy with it because of the cost of time and ingredients to make it. And therefore, I just, yeah, for me, I don't think it's something that's worthwhile. I am going to do this because I obviously bought these beans with the intention to do it, and I will make sure that I will use the spent beans in sugar or in, even I've seen them make vanilla salt. I reckon that'd be really nice, but in a paste or a sugar or something to make sure that I get the value of these beans worthwhile, but it's not something that I will go shopping for again. I think for me, I've done this plenty of times, and I have just found that in the end, purchasing vanilla in bulk, like in 500 mils or litre portions, and New Genie sells it in alcohol-based or not, so you have that choice, and they have Madagascar or standard beans, so like they've got a bunch of choices, and if you find a good place to buy it, I just feel like that's better than the time required. But everyone has their different things that they want to spend time on and that they don't, and all that sort of thing as well, and what they feel is worthwhile and what isn't. So for me, this particular task, not so worthwhile. So I'm just going to finish these and get them in the jar. Now, I'm thinking because of the volume of the beans that we're not going to be able to get enough alcohol in that jar. So I'm going to split it between two, even if they're not full each jar. So what I'm going to do is move 3.5 ounces of the beans into this jar. So we'll go metric weight, ounces by weight, and move 3.5 into this jar. And then if we go 350 mils of the vodka, let's see where it sits. We're experimenting together today. So that's 350 mils of vodka. Let me get my clean implement. All right, so I'm thinking that the shape of that jar with that amount's probably not ideal. What if we put the 3.5 ounces of beans into a pint jar rather than a quart jar, and then the 350 mils of all right, that's going to work better. So I'm going to grab another pint jar for this one, and we've got the 350 mils of vodka with the 3.5 ounces of beans, and they're all nice and covered, and that works well. So I'm going to grab another because I'm just concerned about them popping up out of the top of that vodka. If I had a little bit more vodka to use, I would, but I don't. So I'm liking these jars instead. So I'm going to find lids for that, but I'm going to find a second one of that for this portion. I have a lot of jars and a lot of empty jars at the moment, but you know, wide mouth pints are probably one of the jars that I never have enough of. So let's pour that. You can see already it's picked up some of the colour. The easiest method here is just going to be sliding them in there. I feel like this one's got a bit more liquid in it maybe. Measurement might have been off slightly. I'm going to make sure that everything's covered. I'm going to grab a clean spoon because I might put just a little bit of this liquid in the other one. But I might also just put like a tablespoon in here to get some of those little bits of bean caviar. So I'm just going to grab a little bit of that liquid in there because we've got some of the bean caviar stuck to the bottom. And I'm going to even these out a little bit. There we go. So I feel like that's pretty good. All the beans are under the alcohol. And I'll give them a shake and check on them tomorrow anyway, before they go into hiding for 12 months. But there we go, 2 jars. So I'm just going to find lids. There we go, 2 jars of what will be vanilla extract in like 6 to 12 months. So I'm going to just put these aside. I'll give them a shake every week or so for a few weeks, and then I'll forget about them in the back of the cupboard and remember them maybe at Christmas time when I want them for cooking. So that's done. That's another task off the list. Alrighty, 45 minutes and probe's coming out clean. Looks pretty good to me. I'll let it cool down for 5 minutes and then I'll turn it out onto a rack. So this is what the cake looks like. It's a nice, moist, dense cake. You don't need very much because it's rich, but we'll see what it's like with the sweetener instead of the sugar. It feels like it might be a little bit drier, and that could be less liquid from the sweetener versus the sugar. And of course, everything better cake is whipped cream. So that's our Valentine's cake. So just a quick one from me for today because my plans got foiled, and I wanted to share that cake using the canned oranges from the pantry, and yeah, a good one to give a go. And I'll try and work out the nutritional carb count on it, but it'd be nearly impossible because people don't work out the carb counts on a whole orange, but all the skin is in there as well. So and it's only 2 oranges for the whole cake, and you know, I think this is a good treat type thing in a keto sort of a world. So yeah, happy Valentine's Day to anyone who happens to celebrate, and I hope you had a good one if that was what you were after and got whatever you wanted for it and had a nice dinner or whatever else. So thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.